In today's class, we are going to study a new lesson from Blossoms, and the name of the lesson is The Sea, which is a poem written by James Reeves. Now, James Reeves was born in Wellstone in the London borough of Harrow in the year 1909. He was a British author who was mainly known for his poetry, plays, and contributions to children's literature. His books include anthologies for both adults and children. Anthologies means a published collection of poems or other pieces of writing. Reeves was also well known as a literary critic and broadcaster. Now, a broadcaster is a person who presents a radio or television transmission. So Reeves attended Stowe School, where he won a scholarship to Jesus College, Cambridge. From 1932 to 1952, he taught English in a number of schools and teachers' training colleges. His first collection of poems, The Natural Need, was published in the year 1936. Numerous further volumes by Reeves include The Imprisoned Sea, The Talking Skull, The Statue, and Poems and Paraphrases. Collected Poems of 1974 is the fullest edition of his verses. His popular books of poetry for children were collected as The Wandering Moon and Other Poems in the year 1973. Now, the poem The Sea by James Reeves presents to the reader a whole new, different, and imaginative view of the sea. One would expect that the sea and the dog are two completely unrelated things in this world, which means that the sea and the dog have no connection with each other, right? But while reading this poem, the reader comes to realize that they are, in fact, very alike, and they also share many similarities. The poet also gives us a special, imaginative view of the world around us. So, he uses an extended metaphor to describe the sea as a dog. Let's continue. Now we shall study the summary of the poem. In The Sea, James Reeves compares the sea to a dog through an extended metaphor. Now, what does the word metaphor mean? Metaphor is a figure of speech which is regarded as representative or symbolic of something else. An extended metaphor is a metaphor in a literary work such as a novel or poem that isn't just used in one line but is extended over multiple lines or throughout the work. So in this poem, James Reeves compares the sea to a dog through an extended metaphor in which the choppy sea is like a hungry dog. The roaring sea is like a howling dog, and the calm sea is like a sleeping dog. In the first stanza, the choppy grey sea is characterized as a hungry dog with clashing teeth and shaggy, meaning rough, jaws. The waves roll and gnaw like a dog. On the stones they churn around. The moans mimic the sound of the sea, and the spray resembles the tongue of a dog licking his greasy paws. Reeves also makes the reader agree that poetry gives us a special, imaginative view of the world around us. It is through a poem that we can stretch our imaginative power beyond limits, and we can feel the beautiful experience that it provides. There is also a repetition of the word bones in line 7. This repetition reflects the eagerness of the sound when the dog is gnawing, which means bite at something. So the repetition of the word bone in line 7 in the first stanza shows the eagerness of the sound when the dog is biting at something, that is, it is gnawing on the juicy bone. In the poem leading into the second stanza, Reeves analyzes the sea on a stormy night and the delirious nature of the hungry dog when he is shaking his wet sides over the cliffs. Now, delirious means in a state of wild excitement. The image of waves crashing against a cliff is surprisingly similar to the image of a dog splashing around in a pool. The cliffs being the walls of the pool, the water being the sea. Now, in the last stanza of the poem, Reeves connects the beautiful, tranquil sea to the calm attitude of a happy and no longer hungry dog. So, in the third stanza, we get to see that the dog is in a happy state and it is no longer hungry. Quiet days in May or June shows that the sea is serene and resembles a content, sleepy dog. His head between his paws, he lies on the sandy shores, so quiet, he scarcely snores. Now, in this stanza, Reeves shows a different behavior of the dog. And we can understand this by reading the lines as well. It is no more wild like we have seen in the previous stanzas. The dog has kept his head between his paws and it hardly snores. It is a quiet, sleepy dog now. These last 3 lines of this poem show how calm they can be. It creates a large contrast between the previous conditions that they were in. Now let's read the poem. The Sea. First stanza. The sea is a hungry dog, giant and grey. He rolls on the beach all day with his clashing teeth and shaggy jaws. So in the first stanza of the poem, the choppy grey sea is characterized as a hungry dog with clashing teeth and shaggy jaws or rough jaws. Hour upon hour he gnaws the rumbling, tumbling stones and bones. The giant sea dog mourns, licking his greasy paws. So the poet says that hour upon hour the waves roll and gnaw, means it bites and chews like a dog. On the stones they churn around. The moans of the giant sea dog mimic the sound of the sea, and the spray resembles the tongue of the dog licking his greasy paws. Second stanza. And when the night wind roars and the moon rocks in the stormy cloud, he bounds to his feet and snuffs and sniffs, shaking his wet sides over the cliffs, and howls and hollows long and loud. So, students, in the second stanza, Reeves analyzes the sea on a stormy night, and it makes a different sound then. A howling, as dogs do at the moon, and beating its prey against the cliffs like a wet dog shaking itself. Now the sense of turbulence and tumult, meaning a loud noise is increased by the roaring of the night wind. So the sense of turbulence and tumult is getting increased when the night wind roars. Okay? And the motion of the moon, which rocks in the stormy cloud. Now, as in the first stanza of the poem, the effect is to increase the animation of the sea by describing it as a living thing. So the poet basically wants to portray the sea as a living thing, and therefore he makes a comparison with the dog. The image of waves crashing against a cliff is surprisingly similar to the image of a dog splashing around in a pool. So both the images, that is the image of waves crashing against a cliff and the image of a dog splashing around in a pool, are quite similar. The cliffs being the walls of the pool, the water being the sea. Okay? Third stanza. But on quiet days in May or June, when even the grasses on the dune means a hill of wind-blown sand, play no more their reedy tune, with his head between his paws, he lies on the sandy shores, so quiet, he scarcely snores. So in the last stanza, that is the third stanza of the poem, Reeves connects the beautiful, tranquil sea to the calm attitude of a dog. And the dog is no longer a hungry dog in this stanza. Quiet days in May or June show that the sea is serene and it resembles a content, sleepy dog. So we can clearly understand that the behavior of the dog has undergone a change in the third stanza of the poem, where the dog is no longer a wild, a hungry dog, but it is a happy, a content, and a sleepy dog. His head between his paws, so quiet, he scarcely snores. So these last three lines create a large contrast between the previous conditions that they were in, right? So I hope the meaning of the poem is clear to all of you. Let's continue. Questions. 1. What does the sea look like? Part B of the same question. What is the sea compared to? 2. How does the sea roll on the beach all day? 3. What happens when the night wind roars? Part B of the same question. Where does the sea shake at his wet sides like a dog? 4. What is the condition of the sea on quiet days in May or June? And the last question, number 5. How is the dog portrayed in the last stanza of the poem? So students, please read the poem once again and solve these questions carefully. Thank you.